President Trump makes his case for the first 100 days in a rally and a new TV interview, and he's facing another economic rebuttal, though, to the 100 days claims he's making about progress. In fact, there's tough new signals that growth is flagging in the U.S. Trump's big new interview wound up showing him admitting a point that his DOJ also tried to deny for legal reasons. Trump admitting he's refusing to pick up the phone and facilitate a detainee's return, and so he's not really following the Supreme Court order by his own admission. So we're going to get into both of these stories for you tonight. I want to begin with the sort of double-barreled problem the administration's facing as markets have slowing growth and mounting uncertainty.
The White House received its first GDP report card. The economy shrank 0.3% in the first quarter of 2025.
The U.S. economy shrinking for the first time in 3 years.
The headline was that GDP in the first quarter contracted. First time we've seen a negative number since 2022.
Is President Trump's second term already doomed? A shrinking economy, plunging stock markets, and even defying the Supreme Court. How long can this chaos continue? Tonight, we dive into the disasters shaking the White House and what this means for his presidency. Tonight, we're going to take a deep dive into a series of developments surrounding President Trump as he navigates his second term in office. From economic indicators pointing to slowing growth to serious legal concerns, including a direct defiance of the Supreme Court, the first 100 days of this term are unfolding in ways that raise tough questions about the future of this administration. As the country grapples with these issues, it's becoming clear that there's more than one crisis brewing in the Oval Office. First, let's turn our attention to the economy. The White House recently received its first major report card of 2025, and it's not looking good. The U.S. economy contracted by 0.3% in the first quarter. This marks the first time in 3 years that the economy has shrunk, and the reversal from the 2.4% growth seen in the fourth quarter of the previous year is a significant blow to the administration's narrative of progress. While it's important to note that there are many factors at play when you're talking about national economic growth or decline, it's impossible to ignore the toll that President Trump's trade policies, particularly his ongoing trade war with China, are having on the economy. The numbers are clear. The main driver of the contraction is the tariffs imposed as part of Trump's trade war. According to the Wall Street Journal, these tariffs have disrupted supply chains, raised the cost of goods, and created significant market uncertainty. While businesses are often hesitant to act on negative predictions, they've been bracing for the tariffs to hit, and those predictions are now turning into reality. The impact of these tariffs, combined with the global economic instability, has led to a higher risk of a recession. The uncertainty in the markets isn't just a short-term problem, it's a long-term concern that could continue to worsen over the next year. The broader global economy is also being affected. Axios recently reported that we might be seeing a repeat of the supply chain disruptions we saw during the pandemic. Empty shelves and shortages of popular goods are becoming a real possibility. And it's not just businesses that are worried. Consumers will feel the pain too.
Now the U.S. economy is at risk of repeating pandemic-era scenes. Empty shelves, shortages of popular goods. That's from Axios. And it's what big box CEOs have warned about in a private meeting with President Trump. And it's not immediately reversible because the tariffs can bring what they call long disruptions in these supply chains. And then there are the toys. China makes many products that Americans buy. We know about prices going up, but some products like toys could become so hard to find at all that we're out of them for months, stretching all the way to Christmas. Retailers eyeing toy shortages, freezing holiday orders, predicting those shortages and higher prices. And that's the kind of setback that people will notice. Trump is already trying to get ahead of that potential holiday storyline, a kind of a Grinch problem. He suggests children maybe just can get by on fewer dolls.
Retailers are already warning about potential toy shortages ahead of the holiday season. The once ubiquitous toys that fill store aisles could become scarce, and consumers might find themselves paying significantly more for the same products. This could extend through the end of the year, potentially leaving empty shelves in stores across the country, from big box retailers to smaller shops. Trump's reaction to these potential shortages has been predictable. He's already trying to spin the narrative, suggesting that children might just have to make do with fewer toys. In his words, maybe the children will have 2 dolls instead of 30 dolls. It's a flippant response to a serious issue. The reality is that these toy shortages, along with higher prices for everyday goods, are going to hit American families where it hurts. For many, the holidays are already a stressful time financially, and these disruptions will only add to the strain. But the economic fallout goes beyond toys. There's a larger concern about how tariffs are causing lasting damage to the economy, and it's not just the businesses that are feeling it. The entire U.S. economy is at risk of sliding into recession. As we move into the second half of the year, these growing economic concerns will likely continue to dominate the national conversation. The tariffs that were supposed to strengthen American industry are now being called into question as they appear to be having the opposite effect. On top of that, the stock market, which has historically been a key point of focus for President Trump, is struggling. During his first term, Trump touted the stock market's rise as evidence of his economic success. But now, with the market in decline, he's shifting his rhetoric. Instead of taking credit for the market's earlier gains, he's focusing on the mess he inherited from the previous administration. According to Trump, the stock market is tanking because of the economic conditions he inherited when he took office. It's an argument that might sound familiar to anyone who's been following Trump's rhetoric on the economy, but what does the data say? The stock market is down, and the decline came just after Trump took office. It's no surprise that he's trying to distance himself from the poor performance of the markets, especially given that his administration's policies have had a direct impact on the market's volatility. Trump has shifted his narrative to focus on the economic turmoil he allegedly inherited, but that doesn't explain why his policies are leading to such dramatic economic disruptions. In fact, it's clear that Trump's trade war is playing a significant role in the stock market's decline, further undermining his claims of success.
That's the president's sort of chosen message, obviously pretty coordinated and repeated today. But off stage, there's more scrutiny on Trump's blatant conflicts, abusing shadowy virtual currency networks, the Trump White House eviscerating the boundary between private enterprise and policy without precedent in history. The New York Times reports Trump pocketing more and more money from these crypto influencers and would-be donors. Hard to trace that money. Some of it's from overseas, it would appear. And that investigative reporting puts pressure on the Trump White House, just as reports about Musk's conflicts have, over time, impacted the administration and Musk's businesses, even how long he will be staying in Washington. I actually have more on that later this hour. The independent reporting also can bring up the kind of questions that the president and his PR tactics want to avoid.
Now let's take a moment to turn to another critical issue for the Trump administration: conflicts of interest. The administration has faced growing scrutiny over the president's personal business dealings and the way in which private enterprise and government policy have become increasingly intertwined. Reports have surfaced about Trump's financial ties to cryptocurrency influencers and overseas investors, raising ethical concerns about the way his administration is handling these relationships. In particular, Trump's connections to these shadowy financial networks are raising alarm bells. Some of the money flowing into his coffers is hard to trace, and there are questions about whether it's coming from foreign sources. These revelations are starting to create significant pressure on the White House, especially as Trump's administration continues to face criticism for its lack of transparency and accountability. It's not just Trump's personal finances that are under scrutiny. The Trump White House is facing increasing pressure over the ways in which it has blurred the lines between private business interests and public policy. The administration's handling of this issue is unprecedented in American history, and the concerns are growing. As we've seen with figures like Elon Musk, these conflicts of interest are beginning to take a toll on the administration's credibility. How long can the White House continue to downplay these concerns before they become a full-blown crisis? Amid these economic and financial issues, Trump is also facing a growing legal challenge. In a recent interview, Trump was asked about a Supreme Court order to facilitate the return of a detainee, and his response was striking. Trump admitted that, despite the court's ruling, he was not following the order. When pressed on why he wasn't complying with the law, Trump claimed that it wasn't his decision to make.